Gabe, Tiger Terry. The boys are chomping on them Gators down the swamp tonight. Survive that SEC home cooking. Get a dub, huge dub. Happy for the boys making their free throws, getting it to March. If I ever see that Todd Golden in the streets, I'll be giving him what I call the Tony Perkins, a swift elbow straight to the nuts. That little boy's a twerk. The prettiest girl down in Florida, Gabe's that Lady Gator mascot they got. I've been to the swamp. They ain't nothing. Fight, Tiger.
Hey, guess what? My mic was muted. It's early. I'm going on 4 hours sleep. Anyway, good morning. As I was attempting to say, welcome to your morning Tony Perkins, the PowerMizzou version, as Tiger Terry famously leads us off there on PowerMizzou Live, a special edition after a huge Tuesday night. We're going to bring Drew King on the screen now and talk a little bit about it. We're going to, just so you guys know, we're going to start this talking basketball toward the end. If you want to talk Damon Wilson and a little football, we'll let Drew go and do that. But we're starting with hoops. Drew, that one, I don't think it can be overstated how big it was.
Yeah, hang on one sec, Gabe. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, that one.
That might be worth 2 at some point, but go ahead.
Well, hey, by the way, people in the chat here, I don't want to alarm anybody, and we never ask for super chats, but that was the last party popper in the bag, and they cost $5 at the store. That's all I'm going to say.
Now, $5 a piece or $5 a bag?
I think just the bag is $5.
Okay.
But yes, that was, in my opinion, I know how much the Kansas game means for this fan base, but I think this was a bigger win for the resume because it comes on the road. That was, I believe, the best quality win out of any team in the country this season, because no team has beaten a top 5 opponent on the road before this year. That was also Dennis Gates's highest ranked road win in his career. So a lot of good things coming out of that victory for Mizzou.
Yeah, Drew, got good news, man.
Wow.
Freeway Jared has paid for, well, you're going to owe taxes on the party popper, but Freeway Jared has provided that, and our guy Tim Reynolds has gotten you the ability to get a couple extra bags. So appreciate you guys for hanging out here with us this morning and for dropping that in the chat. You guys' comments, questions, certainly welcome throughout the show, and throw those up. We will get to them. Drew, you are going to be swimming in party poppers, man. Andrew Kessel, we appreciate you, man. Thanks for always being here and for being a part of the show.
My fellow Andrew.
So no, you're 100% right. I mean, you could hear on the broadcast last night, Pat Bradley, and I can't remember who the play-by-play guy was, but almost their evolution of, oh, hang on, Missouri's like a good basketball team. Mm-hmm. And you saw it, Ken Palm, they rise 5 spots, I think it was, to 33. The Net, they go up 7 spots to 27. They're now a quad 1 opponent for anybody that plays them, at least, if this holds. I think you're going to see – I think Missouri can be in the top 25 even with a loss on Saturday. Like, I think that's how big last night was. I think a 1-1 week, winning at Florida, I think the voters look and say, okay, no, this is one of the 25 best teams. Now, look, you don't want to lose on Saturday, and I think with a win on Saturday, they're a top 20 team for whatever that's worth. But I think that's the one that opens people's eyes to what Dennis Gates and his guys are doing. Yeah,
absolutely. Like, as far as what you said with the Net rankings, I don't know that Missouri's been higher than this before. I know for sure this is tied for the highest they've been rated on Ken Palm before. I mean, Gates has them really clicking on all cylinders right now, and I'm not saying it was a perfect game, but what I really like about this team, Gabe, is they just figure out ways to win, right? And if you think back the Memphis game, if Anthony Robinson doesn't cramp up, does that one go differently? Or if Girl's healthy for the bragging rights game, does that one go the other way? Like, I think this team's ceiling is maybe a lot higher than anybody realized coming into the year, and they're starting to show it now.
Yeah, and I think that Memphis game, I mean, not just the Robinson situation, just it's game one. There's a reason coaches don't play that game on the road to start the season, because Dennis Gates basically admitted, look, we were still trying to figure out what we had at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Now he knows what he has, and he knows when he can play guys and all that. Jared, appreciate you, man, for the super chat. Jared Kluba. Got a lot of people on here for 10:30 on a Wednesday morning, man. Really appreciate you guys for hanging out with us. And we'd have done this last night, but the truth was, like, we kind of pre-planned the live shows in advance, and 8:00 weeknight games simply aren't a very good time to do it, especially when, like, I'm not at the game, I'm at home, and my wife, frankly, was asleep well before the end of that game, and I don't know that she would have loved waking up to the sound of a live show, So, all right, so let's start big picture. You and I talked on Monday night, and we both kind of agreed, like, yeah, I think it's a tournament team, but I'm not ready to say for sure it's a tournament team, and that's the season expectation. I think now, like, it is a massive disappointment if this is not a tournament team now.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you look at the KenPom projections, right? He's got them going 10-8 in conference now. Like, I'm pretty sure it was 8-10 yesterday.
And I think it was 7-11 or maybe even 6-12 before the season.
Right. And like, if you went through the specific games, like, he only had them favored in 5. I think it's up to 6 now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, it's still 5, but it's because they picked up this win over Florida. And I think Texas A&M is the one where he's thinking, okay, they can beat that team now. He's also got them going 21-10. I don't think anybody in the world thought this team was going to get to 20 wins this season.
Mercedes Sucks did. He said he put 25 on the message board before
there you go.
Season.
Mercedes, hat tip to you.
Well, and here's the other thing I noticed, Drew, about the KenPom projections now. It's not just the record and the games. There's now only one game projected to be decided by more than 9 points. He has them as an 11-point loss in Tennessee, which, by the way, last night was, like, I think a 13-point loss projected. So things can go against that. But point being, like, even games that he's still projecting them to lose, they have now a much better, they're projected with a much better chance to win. Like, Texas is now a 39% chance to win on the road. Even Mississippi State, it used to be like 14. Now it's 27. Like, again, it's not just the voters and the fans and stuff. The metrics are saying, oh, hang on, we've got to adjust for this team because it's a lot better than we thought it was.
Yeah, well, and like, that's what the Kansas game and this game proves, is like, when Missouri plays to the level that it's capable of, it can realistically hang with anybody in the NCAA, right? Like, you're not going to play teams that are significantly better than Florida or Kansas this season. And so to do that, by the way, Gabe, that was the first time they've won outside of Mizzou Arena this year.
Yeah, crazy.
Like, and I know they haven't had a ton of opportunities, but, like, for that one to be their first road win is really, really crazy.
Yeah, no question. So let's talk about I want to do this. Let's talk about the two kind of negatives first, because there were some, and then I want to get into individual guys and what they showed last night. Let's start with the biggest negative, and, like, these were all the comments, and they were fair last night. I do not blame officiating for losses. Had Missouri lost that game, I would 100% have blamed the officiating for that. I mean, yes, the free throws weren't good, and yes, they made some mistakes and all that. But I don't know that I have seen a situation with so many 50-50 calls, and some of them weren't even 50-50 calls, where virtually everyone except the Caleb Grill 3 that should have been a 2 that they didn't review went against Missouri. I mean, like, a guy grabs the rim and it's not goaltending. A guy elbows Caleb Grill in the face and it's incidental contact, but Tony Perkins elbows a guy in the junk and he's kicked out of the game. I mean, I even thought, you and I texted about this. Missouri's up, I think 4 in the last, 40 seconds or whatever. And the rebound that Tamar Bates tips out of bounds on a Florida missed 3, he was 2-hand shoved in the middle of the back. That's why he didn't get that rebound. It was one of the worst officiating jobs I think I've ever seen. And I don't think the game's fixed. I don't think they hate Missouri. I think this is what happens in loud arenas on home courts. Officials get caught up and they just lose their minds.
Yeah, Dennis Gates, I think, does deserve some credit for avoiding a technical foul in that one.
100%.
Because I don't know that I would have. But yeah, and I didn't think it was horrible in the first half. I'll say that.
Right.
I thought it was pretty even in that first half. But then, like you said, the second half, they're letting a ton of stuff go. And every 50-50 call started going Florida's way. And I'm not going to defend the Tony Perkins thing. I think that probably should have been a flagrant 2, but you're right. If that's a flagrant 2, then how is Caleb Grill getting elbowed in the face not a flagrant, right?
You cannot kick a guy. I can't buy the fact that Tony Perkins is out there intentionally thinking, I'm going to elbow this dude in the nuts and he should get kicked out of the game. Did he make contact? 100%. I have 2 problems with it. First of all, you want to call it a flagrant 1, call it a flagrant 1. Don't kick him out of the game. But second of all, call it a foul. They had the guy he hit not fallen down. They're calling nothing on that because they didn't call anything.
Sure, but he did fall to the ground. I would fall to the ground too, Gabe, if I got hit there.
Me too.
But you're right. That should have been a foul called instead of let's check the monitor and see what just happened in front of our eyes. But yeah, it's. I think it's because of how the rule is written, where if it's any contact in that area is an automatic flagrant 2, and that's what gets them ejected. But like you said, again, I'm not going to defend that play, but if that is a flagrant 2, then I'm not sure how, Mizzou getting Caleb Grill getting elbowed in the face isn't a flagrant 1, or how, anything else doesn't go their way in that second half. And the free throws weren't a huge disparity, but it did feel pretty one-sided throughout the night.
Yeah. I mean, well, and just to prove this is not just whining about calls going against Mizzou, because I think anybody watching this knows that's not what you and me do.
Yeah.
But at one point, the fouls were 7-2 in the second half. Missouri had 7, Florida had 2. Literally a minute and 20 seconds later, it was 7-6. I mean, it's just, it was so bad. But I remember us saying after the Kansas game, when they're up 24 and Kansas gets back to 2, we said, this could in a way be good for this team. Yeah, it would have been cool to just win by 24, but maybe they got tested in a way that helps them down the road. I'll say the same thing about last night. They didn't just beat the number 5 team in the country on the road. They did it in circumstances where I'm not sure very many teams overcome everything they overcame in the second half.
Well, and not to shift it away from the officiating, but 11 missed free throws weren't helping, right?
100%.
That, this game possibly and probably should have been a double-digit win for Missouri, even with all the officiating, just because of how well they were shooting from 3. And how well they were defending Florida in that first half. But I think that the miscues from the free throw line are continuing to be a concern, right? That's one of the few red flags that I think this team still has. But yeah, they went through a lot of adversity. And I know there's been a ton of comments in the chat about T.O. Barrett, and I do want to get to those. We'll because when Tony Perkins went down and Ant Robinson picks up 4 fouls, I kind of get the decision not to go to Marquez Warwick there because he's kind of known more for his offense rather than his defense. And T.O. was ready for that moment. So, yeah, like I think that it just kind of shows what Dennis Gates has been talking about all year is just the depth of the team is real. And that's a big strength for them, knowing that T.O. Barrett, like, it was probably the 15th guy or the 14th guy in the rotation. Like, he was ready for that moment.
Yeah. Jake Mizzou, appreciate the super chat, man. He says Chris Lee said last night that Mizzou won't make the NCAA tournament. So a couple things. First of all, I know, Chris, I'll check if that's what he actually said. It would surprise me. But I also know that they went live with about 8 minutes left in the Mizzou-Florida game. So it is possible he said that thinking, oh, Mizzou's falling apart and Florida's going to win this game. So I don't know. How many SEC teams are going to make the tournament? Look, I think it'll be at least 10. I think it won't be more than 12. And I would lean more toward 10 than 12 because I think you're just going to see things like, I don't know if I can draw a path for Arkansas from 0-4 in the league. Either Texas or Oklahoma is going to be 0-4 in the league after tonight. Like, there are just going to be teams that lose, like they might be tournament worthy, but they lose too many games.
Yeah. So it would also surprise me if Chris Lee said that, just because I know, like, I listened to the show. He pretty consistently says, I think Mizzou is better than the analytics show. So it'd be kind of surprising if that was his take last night. But maybe, like you said, it was kind of early in the game. But yeah, like with Arkansas and Texas, we'll see how Texas or Oklahoma does tonight. But like going 0-4, I don't want to say it's a death note or a death knell, but
pretty close.
Pretty close. Like, you've got to be really, really good down the stretch of the season to get back to 500 or close to it. So I think I'm in agreement with you there. Like, because we're talking about LSU and South Carolina probably out of the running. If you go 0-4, you're probably out of the running. I don't know what Vanderbilt's schedule looks like, but I'm not 100% sold that they're a tournament team. So we're probably looking at 10 or 11 for this year.
I want to be clear. I just texted Chris Lee and asked about that comment, and he replied, "We absolutely did not say that last night." So, look, just in case, I understand people hear things that differently and all that, but just to clear Chris's good name, he did not say that. So, the other thing, like, look, I do understand and the officiating contributed to it, but this is now kind of what Missouri does, right? They come out of the gates. They look like literally the best team in America. I mean, the first 25 minutes against Memphis, the first 30 minutes against Kansas, the first 20 minutes against Florida, early minutes against Vanderbilt, LSU. Like, you're looking at this team and going, I'm not worried if they're going to make the tournament. Like, I want to know what the seed is. I want to know what their path is. And then they give it almost all back. Now, I will say this, and I tweeted this out after the game last night. In the last 3 SEC games, Missouri has trailed for a grand total of 79 seconds. So, like, Kansas never got the lead. Vanderbilt never got the lead. Florida never got the lead. That counts for something. But also, could we maybe do that when it's a 6-point game rather than when it's a 1-point game?
Right. Like, it reminds me of last year where they would make all these crazy comebacks and come up just short. And Mizzou's kind of on the other end of that right now, where, like, here's the thing, the teams they're playing are not going to lie down, right? They're playing some good teams. Like, Florida was never going to say, we're down 16 at the half, we're out of it, let's quit on this game. But yeah, like, I think that it's a little bit concerning just because, again, I said this after the Vanderbilt game, like, is there a lead that's safe for them?
Right.
Like, if they were up, I mean, again, they were up 19 yesterday and they got run down to 2 points. And Kansas, right, a 20 whatever point lead it was, got run down to 1. Like, I don't know that you can ever be comfortable with this team with any lead right now. Even knowing that they haven't trailed that much.
Right. I also think there's some context. Like, I thought the Vanderbilt comeback was more about Missouri. Like, the offense looked awful and Missouri let them back in the game. I thought the Florida comeback was more about Florida. Like, I texted you at halftime. Most teams are down 30 the way Missouri played.
Mhm.
And for Florida to be within, 16 at half, like, honestly, I mean, Walter Clayton was a one-man show that kept that from being 50-20 at halftime. And then Florida came out, and it was almost like Todd Golden told his team at halftime, hey, do you guys remember, like, you're good. You beat the number one team in the country by 30 points. What are you doing? And that's not to take credit away from Missouri, but there are two teams on the floor. And I think we way too often fall into, well, it's only about what my team does. If my team does well, they get all the credit. If my team is getting beat, they get all the blame. Well, no, Florida contributed in the first half. They were not as good. But then Florida also contributed in the second half. They were really good for a really long time and got some calls.
Right. Like you said, they beat the number one team in the country. So you do have to give Florida a lot of credit. But again, I do want to say though, Gabe, like it's a pattern, I guess, is the issue,
Oh, yeah.
right? But
No
because
question.
they've done it against multiple teams. And so you can put each of those into context, and that's fair. But like if you're like, that's what cost them the game against Memphis, right? And it almost cost them against Kansas and Florida. And so there's going to be, I think, a game where they do get caught again. And that might keep them from being like, instead of a 7 seed, it drops them to 8, or maybe instead of a 5, it drops them to 6,
And obviously when you hope it doesn't happen is March, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, it happens at Texas, so be it. But you've got to have it figured out by the time you're going to Nashville for the conference tournament and wherever you go after that. All right. So like you said, we've had a bunch of comments about T.O. Barrett. So I want to go individual players. Let's start with him. I mean, look, I completely understood why he was the guy that Gates went to, and I actually agreed with it. I thought it was the right call. I also thought, oh man, this could really hurt Missouri, and it didn't. I mean, Walter Clayton, he still scored a little bit in the last 8 minutes, but I thought Barrett did a better job on Clayton defensively than anyone who had guarded him all night long. But it wasn't just the defense, right? He had a great alley-oop pass. He had a couple tap outs for rebounds that don't show up on his stat sheet, but are reasons that Missouri got a possession back. I think he had a steal in there. I mean, he played like you said, he is now a guy that I look at and say, okay, there's going to be another game this year where you turn to him by choice, not by necessity.
Well, okay. This has been my comparison since day one for him, has been a more athletic Trey Gomillion, where he's just going to go in there and he's going to make winning plays, because that's what he's all about, is I'm going to do whatever it takes to win this game. And when I watched him in the Geico Nationals, right, and he was the 6th man for Link Academy, and they go into double overtime, and one of their starters fouls out of the game, and they send him in there, and he scores 5 points in the last minute to close out a win in the first round of the playoffs. Like, this was kind of the same deal to me, where they're like, T.O., we need you right now. And he goes in there and he makes winning plays. You mentioned like Walter Clayton, I think, scored 6 points in the last minute. He didn't score at all in the last 2, right? T.O. shut him down. He's got really good size. He's really athletic. If he ever gets a jump shot, like, I think he could be a really, really good player, but they don't even need him to be that right now. They just need him to go out there, play defense. He had a really lovely dump off pass to Mark Mitchell inside that led to a dunk. And like you said, those tip outs for rebounds, he was phenomenal in that game. And I kind of agree with people saying he was the player of the game. Like, I think that they don't win it without him out there.
Yeah. Had a friend who knows a lot of NBA people text me during the game last night that he knew an NBA scout who had been at Mizzou's pro day and said T.O. Barrett's the best pro prospect on the team. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I want to kind of take these individual guys in reverse order of the credit that I think they will get. Look, man, I understand he took a couple of crazy shots in the second half and he didn't finish the game on the floor. Jacob Cruz in the first half, like, I could argue he was their MVP at halftime.
Yeah, you absolutely could. Like, the 3 that he made I think supercharged the team a little bit. He came out with 2 steals.
It was the rebound and the defense.
Yeah. Like that's the part that probably gets overlooked is like, I think people have been really hard on him about his defense. But he was one of the better guys on that end of the floor in the first half. So yeah, like I think that Jacob probably like MVP of the first half. Do we want to say like, yeah,
not the second half, but
right. But first half, like kind of a game-changing player out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still lean Caleb Grill if we're just going MVP, but Cruz is the guy that like should get more credit than he will for that half. And he's T.O. Barrett in the way that, like you were talking about, look, Jacob Cruz is not every game going to be a guy that contributes to winning games, right? He's not going to go win you multiple games like Caleb Grill or Mark Mitchell or Tamar Bates is. But on certain nights, he's going to be that 8th guy or 9th guy or 10th guy, and he is going to be the reason you win a game. And that's the method to Dennis Gates's madness, right? That we all don't necessarily see, that drives us insane. Why is this guy on the floor? Like, okay, we'll just move to the next guy. Like, legitimately, I don't know, 30 seconds before Tony Perkins makes what's maybe the biggest play of the first half. You called it the biggest play of the season at the time, and I'm not sure I'd argue. 30 seconds before that, I was texting friends and saying, it's time to end this Tony Perkins thing, man. It's not working. And then he goes and does that and makes a couple of huge plays. Again, I don't think he should have gotten kicked out of the game. But like, he had a really rough 15 to 18 minutes. And then he had about an 8 to 10 minute stretch where he made a lot of plays.
Yeah. I'll still say I think that tip-in was the play of the season, because you go from only being
because
up 13,
Missouri's a team that has not finished halves well.
Correct. And so to turn a missed free throw into a 3-point play and go into the half up 16 instead of 13, and then you end up winning the game by 1. That extra free throw, I think, was really, really important for this game. And so, yeah, like, he didn't have a great couple of minutes in the game, but that one moment, I think, justified why he was out on the floor.
Tony Perkins is also one of 2 guys on this team I would trust to take 2 free throws that have to win a game.
What is he for the season?
They said during the game last night he was shooting 80%.
Okay.
And like Ant Robinson's shooting 80% too, but like not lately. Perkins, when he stepped to the line last night, I thought, yeah, you feel pretty good about this. I think he was 2 for 3 on the game. But like him and Tamar Bates are the guys where if the game's on the line and you've got to make them, they're the guys I would choose. So those are kind of the like under the radar individual performances right now.
Can I throw one more name into that mix? Marcus Allen.
Okay.
Almost automatic. I think he's at 89%
into the free throw mix.
At the free throw. Yeah, free throw mix for sure.
That's fair. I don't expect Marcus Allen to be in a lot of situations but he did make 2 against Kansas that were huge.
Right. And I'm pretty sure he made 2 last night that were pretty huge. Like,
did he?
24 for 27. Like, that's a pretty good sample size that would tell you, like, he's a pretty good free throw shooter, I feel like.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. So let's move on to the other kind of individuals. And we'll just kind of basically run through the guys we haven't talked about. Tamar Bates, man. Like, you need more, especially in that second half when the team's struggling. Like, I need him to be a guy that when the team is struggling, he says, no, follow me. And right now, I don't think he is.
Yeah, like it was interesting because he got off to such a good start, right? He had like 5 points, a rebound, an assist, and 2 steals in those first 4 minutes or something like that. And then like didn't really show up again for the rest of the game. And we're used to seeing him be better than that, right? Like he dropped 34 or something like that against Florida last year. We know what he's capable of. It's also interesting. I think he's not really getting into the mid-range at all this season, and I feel like that was a pretty big part of his game last year. And maybe that's something that they've told him we don't want you getting into anymore. But he's clearly like not comfortable putting up high volume from beyond the arc, and he's not necessarily big enough to take guys off of the dribble and get all the way to the rim. And so, yeah, sometimes it's he just disappears because I'm not sure he completely knows what to do without the ball in his hands.
Yeah, and I do think he had a couple big rebounds and made a fantastic catch on a really terrible pass by Caleb Grill. So like it's not like he did nothing. It's just he went forever. I don't know that he took a shot in the second half, after the first couple minutes. Yeah, I know he took a couple early. He took 2 threes on that opening possession, and then
he was 0 for 5.
Okay, you need to be a guy that I think in crunch time you can go to get a basket, and he's been that at times, but not consistently. Josh Gray, look, 4 for 6 from the line is great. Missouri, loses the rebounding battle by 1. I've got to believe Josh Gray was last night was not as much a Josh Gray game as I expected it to be, but he played. He did what they asked him to do.
Yeah, that's the important thing is like he got 5 boards and 6 points, and coming into the season, if you told us that was what he was going to put up against Florida, I would have believed it, right? Because that's kind of the role that he was brought in to have. So obviously, I guess maybe he traded in some rebounds for points this game, right? Because we're used to having him 0 and 10, but 6 and 5, you'll take that from Josh Gray any day.
Yeah, you'd take that every single night. All right, so we're down now. We haven't mentioned Trent Pierce yet.
Yeah.
If Trent Pierce could make a layup, I think he would score 15 points a night. But it's dunks and threes. And if it's not a dunk, he missed a couple last night that I thought were really going to cost Missouri.
Yeah.
They didn't. He also made a couple of gigantic plays, none bigger than the 3 that, I think Florida was within 2 points, and he hit a wing 3 that extended the lead, and then Caleb Grill hit one on the next possession. And I know the dunk was on SportsCenter's top 10. That's a mindset play, right? That's what everybody said about Trent. He's just so much more confident this year. He doesn't even try to make that play at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, man, Gabe, he's turning into the player that we were told about last year.
That he was last year, right?
Yeah. And kind of like Isaac said, he looks like a very prototypical SEC 4. And he's more athletic than I was expecting. That dunk was insane, dunking over Alex Condon and Ruben Chinyelo. He's taking guys off the dribble, which I didn't really know he had that in his game. But and he's not got a crazy handle or anything, but he's just faster than them, right? He's pump fakes and then can step by him. And he's hitting his threes this year, which he was not at all last year. So you mentioned it a couple games ago. He's kind of the wild card guy where if this team has another level to unlock, it's because of Trent Pierce.
And I think, look, Caleb Grill's clearly the number 1 choice here. But if you tell me Caleb Grill's not in the game or they double Caleb Grill, I've got to get a 3. I think then maybe I want Trent Pierce shooting it at this point.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous jump shot too. It looks really nice, and he's not over the moon from outside. He's 32.7%, but lately it feels like it's been higher than that. So I think I'm with you. I would trust him with that shot, which also, we would not.
If I trust you with that shot, I ought to be able to trust you unguarded from 15 feet, but I do not trust him at all.
Well, it doesn't help that he's shooting 67% from the free throw line too.
Oh, it seems so much worse than that.
Yeah. But
it's crazy.
Gabe, you remember the Kansas game last year, he was taking those open threes and we were like, it can't be him. And now you would definitely be like, take that shot, Trent. Please take that shot.
Right. Rick, appreciate you coming on late, contributing to the Party Popper Fund. We're gonna be stocked at least through the season, man. I mean, it might depend on how big a run they make in the tournament, but we'll have them for a while. All right, so we've only got 3 guys left. Ant Robinson. I don't know. What do you make of him last night?
Oh gosh. Okay. I think that big surprise he got into foul trouble, right? Like
in a game that's called like that, there's no I was amazed he didn't foul out.
Yeah. But I think he hit some threes which were huge. You mentioned it before. If he can hit 2 threes per game, he's a really, really useful player on offense because that kind of lets him get by his guys. But what's going on at the free throw line with him?
Yeah. And like, that's why that's clearly why Gates didn't go back to him. I mean, he just said, I mean, I think in the last 2 games, Ant's now 7 for 14 from the line. Like 1 for 2 wouldn't have been good. If Mark Mitchell and Caleb Grill go 1 for 2 in the last 30 seconds, Missouri probably loses that game.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. And I know Ant's mom is probably going to cuss him out for missing the free throws, but and like, it's not just that he's missing, but it's like he'll miss the front end of a 1-and-1. And so that's really like going 0 for 2. But here's the thing, Gabe, like he didn't turn the ball over. He's been really good about that this season. He didn't get his hands on steals, but I still think he's a really good defender. And so to finish with 12 points and to not foul out of the game, I think was pretty important.
And also worth pointing out, that's probably the best backcourt Missouri's going to play all year. Like they're really good.
Yeah, that I would maybe say Tennessee is up there too, but
that's
like
fair.
Maybe Alabama, but Florida's as good as
it's in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Real quick before we get to our last 2 guys, Breakfast King says point of emphasis for next practice, not elbowing dudes in the nads. I don't know. I might actually argue make it a point of emphasis to do it. It worked fine. Got T.O. Barrett on the floor. Everything worked out. All right. So Mark Mitchell, first of all, like, okay, all the grief we're giving Ant about his free throw shooting, has Mark Mitchell fixed it?
Oh, I wouldn't go that far.
I wouldn't go that far either, but he's been really good there the last 2. I think he was 7 for 9 last game and maybe 6 for 7 last night.
Yeah, definitely a big improvement out of him. He's still only up to 61% for the year. But here's what I'll say, Gabe. It's like he wasn't great in the first half, but he came up with some really clutch plays in the second, right? I already kind of mentioned the dump off from T.O. Barrett and to dunk that in, and then to hit those last 2 in the final 30 seconds when I think that Florida pretty intentionally wanted to send him to the line. Like that's what clinched the game.
Yeah. And I think too, because I asked the question in the Vandy game and I saw some people asking it last night. We're going to have to accept the fact that in order for him to be one of the guys on the floor in the last 8 minutes, and he's always going to be one of the guys on the floor in the last 8 minutes, there's going to be a 4 to 6 minute stretch earlier in the game where he's not playing. And like, that's the plan. And I get it now because we've seen it happen a few games, but in the moment, it's like, hang on, he's your second best, at worst, your second best player. You need him on the floor more, but in order to get those last 8 minutes out of him, you're going to have to give him a break earlier.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll say this too about Mark. Led the team in rebounds, which he has not done very much this year. And that's kind of one thing that I think that they've been wanting more from him. And he showed up in a big way. Like, I think Florida would have dominated the glass without Mark Mitchell last night. He did a really good job of holding off their bigs. And letting it be a more even matchup in that area.
All right, so we saved the big man for last, and this would be where if I had party poppers, I would just shoot them all off and do a victory lap because I said on Monday night, Missouri's easiest path to victory in this one is that Caleb Grill just has an oh my God Caleb Grill night, and he did. I mean, Drew, I don't know. I didn't look at the play-by-play. I think those 4 threes in the first half were all in about a 4.5-minute span. I mean, it was just boom, boom, boom. And they were like, I know Mark Byington said after the Vandy game, hey, they made some shots that we can't guard. I mean, Caleb, like, I blame Florida 0 for those shots. I don't even think they were good shots. They're only good shots for Caleb Grill when he's feeling like that.
Yeah, it's a lot like Demoy Hodge 2 years ago, where he's just unconscious pulling up from outside, right? He's not thinking about it at all. And like when he gets hot like that, it like the rim has to be like 10 feet wide.
Well, how would he know? He doesn't touch it.
Exactly. Like, and like there was a moment where Todd Golden, it had to be like the most furious he got last night, where he's yelling at Elijah Martin, you can't give him that much room. You can't, you have to step up. I watched the playback and I was like, he's in Caleb Grill's jersey. Like, I don't know what
the closer you foul him.
Exactly. So
he's got one of the quickest releases I've ever seen. And the thing about him is he does not have to be he's almost a better shooter when he's not squared up. So I want to, first of all, I did tweet last night. I think it was after Grill's 4-3. I tweeted Caleb Grill is white hot, and somebody said, I see what you did there. I said, I swear to God, I was not intentionally doing that. Like, didn't even cross my mind. It was just the phrase white hot, but I kind of like it. Bo was asking if Grill's last 3 was really a 3. It was 100% not.
No.
But that's okay. Like, Missouri was up 4. They actually play defense on Florida's last possession. So like, it didn't change the game, I don't think, but I was really surprised they never went back. I wonder if by the time they figured out they could go back and look at it, they were like, oh no, it's too late. Like, we can't do this now. Dennis Gates will murder us.
Right. And, even if you want to say like, that should have been a 2 and it should have been a tie game. Like, Mizzou probably fouls if they're up 3 in those last couple of seconds, right? So I don't think it would have changed the outcome of the game in any way.
Yeah. Chief says flashbacks of Gilbert and Drew, like, I know that you obviously never saw Clarence Gilbert play, but I did tell a couple friends last night, I'm going to start calling Caleb Grill White Gilbert. I mean, Clarence had a game I was at against Iowa State where he hit 12 threes, and it was insane. I mean, when that dude got hot, he was open as soon as he crossed half court. I'm going to give you, the fans here, I'm going to give you a real old school Mizzou name here. My favorite shooter in Mizzou history, Mark Atkins. Mark Atkins was on campus to do one thing. It was to shoot 3-point shots. And I saw him, I swear to God, hit one before he fell into the bench one time. I mean, he never saw a shot he didn't like. And if his first one went in, the next 12 were maybe going to go in. Now, he was also capable of, going 0 for 8, as was Clarence. I think that's, and I think Caleb Grill is too, right? He's capable of being 8 for 9 or 0 for 9. But if those first 2 go in, there is nobody that you'd rather have shooting the ball, especially because, like you said, he just doesn't need any space to do it.
Right. And he might start off 0 for 5, but he's going to keep shooting. Like, I think his confidence is through the roof right now. And that's kind of what he showed in the Vanderbilt game, was like, I'm 0 for 5, but I'm going to hit my next 2. And those are going to be the ones that help win the game. So, like, yeah, I think that Caleb is honestly, like, going to be a top 3 player almost every single night out because of what he can do on both ends of the floor. Right? Like, it's not just the shooting, but it's also, he's a really good defender. He's really physical and gets to a lot of steals. And also what he does on the boards. Like, he's a really well-rounded player. I think that they could have used him a ton last year.
And I thought Pat Bradley brought up a good point last night after Caleb got clocked in the face for the second time in 3 possessions. Pat Bradley said, I think he kind of likes it. He said, Caleb Grill can take a shot. And it's like, that's got him going, man.
Yeah, I believe it. Josh Gray called him a little sick before the season, and I was like, that sounds accurate.
Yeah. All right. So I want to wrap up here, and I'm going way back to the first comment we got in the show. Sam Thomas says, my best Gabe DeArmond impression. Tuesday's win was nice, but it doesn't mean anything unless you go out and take care of business on Saturday.
That's pretty
All right,
good,
you know
Sam.
what? I disagree. I disagree. I think you can lose Saturday and you're still ranked. Last night allows you to lose Saturday. Now, you don't want to lose Saturday, right? But what we did all this, okay, here are the games they have to win. One of those now doesn't necessarily have to be a win because last night's like a win and a half.
Right.
Maybe almost two.
I'll go the other way just because, like, we just saw Arkansas lose to LSU on the road. Mizzou should be a tier above LSU, I think.
Sure. But weird things are going to happen. Florida didn't think they
should
lose to Missouri at home.
Sure. And look, this win does put you ahead of schedule, right? But Arkansas is not a team I don't think this year that you should fall back behind, I guess. Like, to start off 0-4 like we talked about, and to play the way they are, where they're not getting points up on the board, I think that's kind of a must-win game for Mizzou.
So here's the difference to me. Before last night, Arkansas was a must-win game. Now it's one that will, if you lose it, it's a missed opportunity.
Sure.
Like, yes, you want to win it. You should win it. I think it will be, I think two things are going to be at play. First of all, any coach will say your hardest job in coaching is to get your team grounded after a huge win. Mm-hmm. Like Dennis Gates has spent a year convincing those kids they're better than any of us thought they were. He has to spend the next 3 days convincing them they're not as good as we think they are.
Mm-hmm.
So, Missouri's jumped out to these big leads, right? Do they come out flat on Saturday? Like, I think that's a distinct possibility.
Yeah.
The second part is very much dependent on Arkansas. Does Arkansas show up like a team that is playing for its season, or does it show up like a team that already lost its season by losing in Baton Rouge? And I don't know which way it'll go.
I think that those are kind of the big two questions there. Here's what I'll say, though. Like, if we thought of LSU and Vanderbilt as must-win games, I think that Arkansas is kind of playing at that level right now. Right. I just don't see how,
but they're better than those teams, though.
They have more talent.
Yeah.
But they're not playing at a higher level. Right. And so that's kind of where I'm at is just that if Mizzou is the team that we think they are, this should be a game that they win.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Drew, I know you got a full 9 hours of sleep last night. You're feeling good. You were happy to do this, and you'd be happy to sit here for 2 more hours, but I'm sure you got plenty more stuff to go. Sport in the morning, another game on Saturday. And by the way, I do want to say, feel pretty good right now about that decision that you're going to go down to Austin and cover the game in person next Tuesday.
Yeah, definitely. But I also got to go to the store and get some more party poppers, apparently. So
fair. You have plenty of money now, thanks to our generous viewers. So, all right, Drew, appreciate you, man. We're going to let you go. And guys, if you guys want to talk a little football here, we'll do that for the next 10 minutes or so. Very strange to get a commitment like Missouri got on Tuesday night, and for it to so quickly fade into the background. Missouri gets a commitment from Georgia edge rusher Damon Wilson II. Visited Missouri last Thursday, visited Ohio State on Sunday. There was some talk of either Texas A&M, maybe trying to get involved. That didn't happen. He commits to Missouri last night. Number 5 overall player in the portal. Number 1 available player in the portal. Number 2 defensive player in the portal. And the highest rated transfer tied with Caden Green that Missouri has ever gotten. And when I say ever, I mean here in the last, 4 or 5 years. So I think obviously huge. It's like the hope is it's a 1-for-1 Johnny Walker replacement. Now, he has not done on the college level what Johnny Walker has done on the college level, but Johnny Walker hadn't done that 2 years ago either, right? And Sam points out Darius Smith and Damon Wilson next year. That's the hope, right? That these 2 former Georgia guys are what you think they are as pass rushers. Because Zion Young, I think he's a pretty good defensive end, holds up well against the run. He's not like the blow around the right tackle and get you a bunch of sacks. I mean, he's just not a big sack guy. So I think Smith and Wilson are kind of those guys that you're counting on to be the, go hit a guy in the back and cause a game-changing turnover. I'm not comfortable saying Missouri is done in the portal. I think there's a chance they could add one more, whether that, if an offensive tackle pops in, if a receiver they just really like and can't say no to pops in, that's a possibility. But I think if that doesn't happen, we're probably set with the 17 guys that they've got. And heck of a portal class. We've got it ranked number 8 right now. I know some other people have it ranked higher. That's fine. We talk about our rankings. Number 8 that's pretty darn good. Drinkwitz has shown a propensity to be able to recruit the portal. Oof and Tobacco says it seemed like everyone had him going to Ohio State. Any idea what changed? Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not sure anything changed. I think a bunch of people made assumptions at the beginning, right? I think 2 things happened. First of all, he visited Ohio State out of high school, and they were in his top 3. Actually, most people thought his top 2. And so when Ohio State went back in on him, I think a lot of people said, well, he almost went there last time. He's going to go there. And then here's the second thing that happened. People outside of Columbia, Missouri, outside of the state of Missouri, see Ohio State's recruiting a kid and Missouri's recruiting a kid. They're going to pick Ohio State every single time, guys, and that's not going to change. Same thing happened with Dorial Green Beckham a few years ago, right? Same thing happened with a lot of guys. It's just, Missouri's not winning that battle, but it's different now. NIL has changed this. And Eli Drinkwitz has changed it too. I don't mean to take credit away from Eli Drinkwitz. Somebody asked me a question in the mailbag about how important it was to have players from the state of Missouri. And I said, it's less important than it's ever been. And the reason is because Eli Drinkwitz out of state is recruiting at a level we didn't think was possible. And so he's changed that dynamic. So Eli deserves credit too, but don't ignore the donors and the money part of this, right? I just complained about this a couple days ago. People who do what I do, like we let these kids get away with talking about the brotherhood and the family atmosphere, and we just pretend they aren't getting money. They're getting money. My guess is Missouri gave him more than Ohio State was going to give him. Good for them. That's not a negative. That's using the system to your advantage, So big get. I think that the portal is, again, maybe not done, but at least like we've got a lull here. I know Missouri is not planning on any more visits this week, portal-wise. Again, things can change. Somebody could pop in. Somebody could pop in after the national title game, whatever. Something could happen that changes things a little bit. Portal is open until midnight tonight, another 12 hours for Penn State and Texas players. Who knows what could happen there? I know a couple of Penn State receivers went in yesterday. So look, I've learned enough to say never is anything impossible, but I think we're kind of on a hold for portal stuff. They're bringing in a bunch of 2026 kids and some 2027 kids for Junior Day on Saturday. Sean will have a preview of that. We'll have some information on that in the chamber. I'll be at the basketball game during TV timeouts of the Chiefs game. I will see which recruits are there. No, I'm kidding. I'll do my job. So we will have all of that. Again, Drew, had full coverage from the game last night. He will have more in his column tomorrow. And I do want to point out, guys, we made a decision a week or two ago. Drew's going to Austin for the Texas game next week. He's going to Knoxville for the Tennessee game in a couple weeks. The only one that we are missing between the now and the end of the regular season, as of now, is Mississippi State. And look, that could change. Drew's in the chat right now talking party poppers. If Drew gets a wild hair and says, you know what, I really want to go to that game and I'm willing to drive 9 hours each way, then we'll talk about that. There's just no good way to fly to Starkville. But Mississippi State's the only game that between now and the end of the regular season, I believe that we're not going to be at in person. Maybe also Georgia, depending on how that goes. But travel for basketball is a little bit different. We don't do every game. Obviously, we weren't there last night. It's just tough financially and time-wise and all that. But I can say this: we're going to be at far more games than anybody else is going to be at that covers Missouri. And Drew is going to cover this team every single day, however far they go. And it's a lot farther this morning than we thought maybe it was going to be yesterday morning. So appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Do me a favor. Like, comment, subscribe, share, do all the things that help get this out to more people. Watch the daily PM and the AM hits I'm doing. Those are gaining some traction. We're getting a couple thousand views on all those. So the more you watch, the more you tell people about it, the more people check it out, and the more we can do. So appreciate you guys respecting our sleep schedules last night and hanging out with us here. Over, almost 250 people at midday on a Wednesday is pretty good. Now, come on, guys, go do your jobs. Appreciate you hanging out. Talk to you next time.